kilalanin natin ang official and updated complete pool lineup ng South All-Star para sa nalalapit na 2026 PBA All-Star. Point guards, RJ Abarientos, 31,408 All-Star votes, 5'10", 187 pounds, 26 years old, 15.8 points, 3 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 1 steal, 31% 3-point shooter, 86% free throw shooter in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. Mark Baroka, 11,382 All-Star votes, 5'10", 170 pounds, 39 years old, 10.4 points, 3.9 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 0.6 steals, 26% 3-point shooter, 85% free throw shooter in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. Jerome Lastimosa, 8,116 All-Star votes, 5'11", 165 pounds, 27 years old, 13.1 points, 3.4 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.3 steals, 34% 3-point shooter, 75% free throw shooter in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. John Nards Pinto, 7,078 All-Star votes, 5'11", 170 pounds, 35 years old, 1 point, 1 rebound, 0.4 assist, 66 field goal percentage, 9.3 minutes per game in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. Gio Halalon, 5,208 All-Star votes, 5'9", 170 pounds, 33 years old, 4.3 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3.1 assists, 0.9 steals, 29% 3-point shooter, 90% free throw shooter in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. Shooting guards, Scottie Thompson, 29,892 All-Star votes, 6'1", 180 pounds, 32 years old, 11 points, 6.5 rebounds, 6.4 assists, 1.4 steals, 31% 3-point shooter, 62% free throw shooter in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. Robert Bolick, 20,862 All-Star votes, 6'1", 178 pounds, 30 years old, 18 points, 5.5 rebounds, 8.4 assists, 1.4 steals, 32% 3-point shooter, 96% free throw shooter in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. Alex Stockton, 9,290 All-Star votes, 6'2", 170 pounds, 27 years old, 14.9 points, 3.5 rebounds, 2.2 assists, 1.5 steals, 41% 3-point shooter, 78% free throw shooter in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. Reynam Batak, 8,416 All-Star votes, 5'11", 180 pounds, 32 years old, 11.2 points, 3.3 rebounds, 2.9 assists, 0.7 steals, 32% 3-point shooter, 69% free throw shooter in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. Chris Ross, 7,816 All-Star votes, 6'1", 180 pounds, 40 years old, 1.1 points, 2 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 0.6 steals, 5% 3-point shooter, 50% free throw shooter in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. Small forwards, Jericho Cruz, 10,512 All-Star votes, 6'1", 190 pounds, 35 years old, 11.5 points, 2.5 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.1 steals, 33% 3-point shooter, 85% free throw shooter in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. R.R. Pugoy, team captain, 10,378 All-Star votes, 6'2", 180 pounds, 33 years old, 14.4 points, 3.4 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 1 steal, 34% 3-point shooter, 85% free throw shooter in his PBA 50th Philippine Cup averages. Sonny Steele, 9,810 All-Star votes, 6'3", 176 pounds, 24 years old, 5.8 points, 2.8 rebounds, 0.9 assists, 29% 3-point shooter, 65% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Jonard Clarito, 7,494 All-Star votes, 6'2", 187 pounds, 30 years old, 13 points, 6.4 rebounds, 2.2 assists, 1.1 steals, 41% 3-point shooter, 74% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Power forwards, Calvin Oftana, 21,770 All-Star votes, 6'5", 186 pounds, 30 years old, 15.9 points, 6.1 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 0.8 steals, 35% 3-point shooter, 69% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Kaylan Tiongson, 8,722 All-Star votes, 6'5", 204 pounds, 33 years old, 10.8 points, 8.3 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 0.4 steals, 26% 3-point shooter, 70% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Leonard Santillan, 8,586 All-Star votes, 6'4", 210 pounds, 30 years old, 10.6 points, 6.7 rebounds, 0.8 assists, 0.8 steals, 33% 3-point shooter, 44% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Centers, Junmar Fajardo, team captain, 33,630 All-Star votes, 6'10", 268 pounds, 36 years old, 16.6 points, 14.6 rebounds, 5 assists, 0.7 steals, 1.2 blocks, 60 field goal percentage, 62% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Kelly Williams, 5,930 All-Star votes, 6'6", 215 pounds, 43 years old, 8.4 points, 4.3 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 0.6 steals, 37% 3-point shooter, 72% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Poy Eram, 5,338 All-Star votes, 6'8", 237 pounds, 36 years old, 5.4 points, 2.9 rebounds, 0.7 assists, 1 block, 50% 3-point shooter, 85% free throw shooters, PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Ito ang official and updated complete full lineup ng South All-Star para sa nalalapit na 2026 PBA All-Star. Sa tingin niyo mga kabubbles, sino-sino ang deserving mapasama sa final 12-man lineup ng South All-Star? I-comment niyo na po yan sa baba.